Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmaswarupine avatara varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha. In the last talk, we learnt several points. Number one, that the worship of the Guru, the cult of the worship of the Guru in India led to the belief in the avataras, in the incarnations. Secondly, avatara cult was there in the Vedas itself. It is a very old cult. I mean, belief in avatara was there, that is found in the Vedas itself. Third, avatara has got special characteristics. That was, he is eternally pure. The incarnations, when they take birth, from the very birth, we see them, it absolutely pure. That is beyond the touch of the nature, the Prakriti. And they are eternally illumined. There is no time when they are in ignorance. They are always possessing infinite knowledge. And they are free from the bonds of karma. And they are unselfish in all their action. Whatever they do for the welfare of others. There will be no trace of selfishness in their actions. And they remember all their previous births. These are the fundamental characters of all the avatars. Then fourthly, they come to establish a new religion, a new path to God realization. Fifthly, it is observed that whenever the righteousness declines, the religious feelings, they decline, faith in religion declines, and the opposite just ascends, grows, irreligion grows, then the incarnation of God takes place. And also we saw that in the present age, the progress in every field of human life has taken place since last 400 years. The progress has taken place in the invention of flying in the air, which was considered as impossible, which was only a dream, they used to say, but it has become a reality. Progress in the taking place in every field like that. Flying in the air, crossing the huge oceans, diving into the deep seas, climbing the tallest mountains, study of plants and animals, exploration of the outer space, studying human body and mind, which they came to the conclusion they both are material. Even the mind is equated with soul in the Western language. So the soul and the material, it is also considered as a material according to their materialistic observation. And when they studied the disorders of the mind and found that there is the inexorable law of cause and effect. The inexorable law of cause and effect is there in the physical world, in the mental world also. So they believe they are yet to find out only one thing, that is a eternal individual soul which outlives the body. It is yet remaining, and the experiments are going on. Efforts to discover the individual eternal Atman is going on. They believe that the individuals can continue in the continuity of their nation. In the meanwhile, when the existence of an individual eternal soul is not found, how can we put our efforts for the welfare of the whole nation? So they gave the explanation that the individual continues in the nation. Whatever effort we do for the progress of the nation, it lives. So all my discoveries will be there in the nation. So I live through the nation. It was the consolation they gave for the individual souls. Though you may not feel yourself an eternal individual, because we have not discovered an individual eternal soul, but history shows us that all your efforts are carried forth through your nation. So we live in the nation, in the form of nation. So this is how the materialists, they put their philosophy before men and became very, very, very interesting people. And people absorb whatever they say, and then they are continuing in the same way. Till now, they are progressing in this materialistic philosophy. So this was what we learned in the last discourse. Today, we will start the study of this Ramakrishna and his divine play from page 76. Although the expansion of materialism originated primarily in the West, the influence is abundantly visible in India and other Eastern countries. As the power of science daily brings the East and West closer to each other, the ancient Eastern outlook on life is becoming more and more similar to the Western pattern. This becomes evident when one studies the present condition of Persia, that is Iran, China, Japan, and India too, among others. Whatever may be the future outcome, there is no doubt that the West has influenced the East. So, to determine the long-term effects of Western influence, we must concentrate our analysis on the West and analyze the lives of its people. What is the source of the West's materialistic progress? What is its nature? And how has its influence affected the early ideas of the West and how it brought progress or deterioration? In relation to the past, in what proportion has it influenced the happiness and misery of Westerners? If the effect of this materialism on the lives of individuals and of nations in the West can be determined, it will not at all be difficult to extrapolate the same results elsewhere in the course of time. If we know what has come out of the materialism of the 400 years, we can also expect similar results to come. Now materialism has started in the eastern side also because of the influence of the West. Now, the origin and history of progress in the West we can see. Historical records clearly indicate that from ancient times the severity of cold climate firmly instilled body consciousness in the Western mind. On one hand, this body consciousness made Westerners selfish. On the other, it led them to pursue their self-interest through collective effort, which developed into their nationalism. So the national idea developed very strong in the West because they had to work hard to produce many things for their comforts. So the collective interest and collective efforts brought them together and made them into well-knit nations. This combination of selfishness and nationalism eventually motivated them to vigorously amass wealth by defeating other nations, invading and defeating other nations. When they had satisfied their material needs, they gradually became introspective and engaged themselves in learning and acquiring virtues. Only when the nation is well off, free from poverty, above the poverty line, then only it can give mind to finer aspects of education. The art, the philosophy, etc. comes into prominence. So they started then learning and acquiring other virtues. When the struggle for existence was no longer paramount and they were able to focus on the pursuit of higher things, they perceived some obstacles. And this obstacle was the bigoted religious beliefs and the supreme authority of the priesthood. These became their obstacles for their progress in the material sense. Not only did the priests say that the pursuit of materialistic science would displease God and doom its practitioners to eternal hell, but they also firmly resolved, even with their little powers over people, not to allow people to progress further in the material progress. But Western people forcefully set aside the priesthood and moved forward with their studies of science and philosophy. Disregarding the priests as well as the scriptures and religious belief, Westerners set their lives upon a new path. Their guiding principle became the following: do not believe or accept anything without definite evidence from the five senses. The truth regarding a particular object was henceforth to be based on direct sense perception and ascertained through reasoning and inference. Holding this view, Westerners grew to adore the objective world of matter, considering the subjective realm which is perceived as I consciousness to be a kind of matter. Western scientists began to explore the nature of that consciousness from their materialistic point of view. Thus, over a period of 400 years, Western people learned to accept the reality of each individual being and material object through examination based on the five senses. Within that period, physical science had freed itself from the sluggishness and helplessness of its infancy and reached its youth invigorated with strength, zeal, hope, and joy. So the science it broke itself away from religion in the West. Western materialistic progress precludes knowledge of the self. This leads to restlessness. This the author explains to us. Although this made possible great progress in the physical sciences, the method of direct examination via the senses could not reveal the path of self-knowledge to the West. The only way to attain self-realization is through self-control, selflessness, and introspection. And the only procedure for achieving this is to gain absolute control over one's thought waves of the mind. It's no wonder that most Westerners, being extroverted, missed the path to self knowledge and became materialists, identifying themselves with the body. So, West also knew that this self is there. So, how to make it an object of the five senses? They could not do it because it is not possible. There are certain things which are beyond this sense perception. So the Atman, the I consciousness, so it is cannot be perceived through senses by its very nature. So they missed the path to self-knowledge because they went on saying that only the sense knowledge they accept. If something is not revealed to the senses, they would not accept. For this reason, they consider worldly enjoyment to be the main goal of life and dedicate themselves to achieving it. It is as against what the religions preach. There is a higher joy, the joy of the spirit, the joy of the soul. So they denied it. No soul or joy of the soul, only joys that are left is of the senses. Therefore, for this reason, worldly enjoyment became the goal of the materialists. Their knowledge of material objects acquired through science has been applied primarily to the purpose of creating more and more enjoyments. Because of this, over time, they have become proud and greedy. Enjoyments, when they're satisfied, you want higher enjoyment, greater enjoyment. That is called greed. So greed develops. So we therefore now find in the West a caste system based on wealth. So all the wealthy people combine together. They want to get more wealth, more sense enjoyments. That is something like a caste. We see terrible cannons, bombs, guns, weapons of mass destruction. Relentless misery, born of poverty also exists side by side with the enjoyment of immense wealth. Because rich people become richer by hoarding more and more wealth. How will they get the wealth? So at the cost of others. So the poverty and rich, both they exist together. Relentless misery, this misery is continuing in the West. So for mitigating this misery, more and more I want. Where do I get it? Not inside my own country. So go and invade each other countries and take away all the wealth that is there. At the same time, make the slaves of those people, make them work for us. So this is the way the materialist progress took place there. Because of the unquenchable thirst for wealth, the occupation and domination of other countries became rampant. That is colonization. So we all see it in history. So the Swami is quoting that how the materialism progressed. If we get an idea, this is going to come if we continue materialism here also. One can see that in spite of reaching the acme of enjoyment, the souls of men and women in the West are not satisfied. There are some intelligent people, more cultured people, so they find an emptiness in the life. So sense enjoyment, it has its own limit. Afterwards one gets tired. So that made them not dissatisfied. They are not content with the theory that although they may die, the nation will live on and benefit from their self-sacrifice. So, after careful examination, some Westerners have realized that they cannot discover the reality beyond space and time. That is the reality of the Atma, reality of the soul, individual, eternal soul. And through the limited knowledge grasped through their five senses. Science may present to them a momentary glimpse of the transcendental reality. Some great scientists, so they have told that there seems to be an eternal intelligence, what we call as God, but we are unable to prove through the senses and in the laboratory. So some people, they reached, it cannot go further, but they could not go further than this. Then, because it is incapable, the science is incapable of reaching and comprehending that realm. Science, like a god, made Westerners powerful. It offered enjoyment, prosperity, and wealth. Now, because that science has been discovered to be inadequate, there is a void in the hearts of Westerners that is increasing day by day, and they feel utterly helpless. So this is how materialism has led to a tremendous helplessness, a tremendous sort of dryness. When studying the history of the West, one observes that the expansion of its civilization was based on the drive for enjoyment or selfishness, and on a lack of faith in religion. Whoever wants to achieve the results that the West enjoys must somehow establish their personal or national lives on Western materialistic values. So if people who want to adopt materialism in other countries, including our country, then we must also follow the same thing. We must also give up the religion, the faith in religion, the great priests or the people who teach us the real religion. So all those things we have to just forego, leave them aside and only follow the line of the Western materialism. And one can see that Japan and some other Asian countries have built their national lives according to Western pattern. As a result, along with their nationalism, they are developing the attendant problems of materialistic civilization. This terrible drawback to westernization can be clearly understood by studying the present condition of India's national life following its contact with the West. So the author further goes and says, what is the basis of national life in India and how it is being affected. So he starts the discussion of that subject. So now the question arises, was there any national life in India before it came in contact with the West? The answer is that undoubtedly it did exist in practice, but was not articulated. Even in those days, all Indians were devoted to their gurus. Guru cult was there. The Ganges, Ganga, devotion to Ganga, Gayatri Mantra, and the Gita. Cows were revered all over India because of their usefulness in agriculture and because they provided milk and other products of food. The spiritual ideas of the Ramayana, the epic Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and the other scriptures inspired and guided the life of every man, woman, and child. And Pandits from different parts of India communicated their ideas with one another in Sanskrit, the language of the gods. Thus, various unifying links among the different regions in India can be observed. Without doubt, religious ideas and practices constituted the main basis of that unity. You see, the unity of the Indian nation, the main basis is religious beliefs. We, from one end of the India to the other, we have got common religious beliefs. So, because of that strong religious beliefs, belief in Ramayana, belief in Mahabharata, and belief in the heroes of those epics, and beliefs in Guru, Ganga, Gayatri, Gita, all this united this whole vast country with people of different cultures, etc. This is nationalism. So Indian nationalism is based on these spiritual factors. That's what the author is driving. With religion as its basis, Indian society never struggled for sense pleasure. Because India's national life was based on religion, its civilization was constituted in a unique way. To put it briefly, self-control was the life force of this nation, civilization. Self-control. Hold yourself alert. Don't just fall a prey to your senses. So this advice is given to every child. Don't be a slave of the senses. Be a master of the senses. India taught each individual and race to regulate their respective lives with self-control. Mottos such as the purpose of enjoyment is to renounce it ultimately. This is a motto. The purpose of enjoyment is to get tired of it. As West is feeling it now, they are getting tired of physical enjoyment. What is there? It is like a rigmarole. So the children were taught, you don't have to go through all the experience of years. So our experience of old people is, don't run behind only sense enjoyment. Sense enjoyment you require to know what its nature is. Know that it is not everlasting. It will not give you the everlasting peace or joy. To know that one is the real purpose of sense enjoyment. So they put it in a precise way. The purpose of enjoyment is to renounce it ultimately. This was taught to the children. And the lessons in this life are preparations for the next. There is a continuity. You are not going to end up with this physical body. But the physical body will go. But all the knowledge you have gained in this life will start. We will start the next life with all this knowledge. Nothing is lost. So this was also taught. Have always reminded Indians of the highest ideal and guided them toward that end in every stage of their individual lives and collective national lives. That is why the caste or class system had not yet created any class conflict or terrible discontent among them. This class conflict is a great factor in the Western civilization. Everywhere, in every country, there is a class conflict. And it could have happened in India also. But there was no competition like that. Nobody thought that someone else is responsible for his misery. They always took all the responsibility upon themselves because of this spiritual thinking that we are all continual existence. We have a continual. We are the Atman. So we have done something wrong. Therefore, the bad effects are coming. I will improve my future. I am the master of my future. So why should I blame somebody else? Oh, some rich man has caused me poverty. That is the reason they give in the West for the poverty. But in India, we don't give that. So if it is poverty is there because of some reasons, so I become a rich man by hard work, by treading the path of morality, path of goodness, path of selfless service. So this is how we took everything upon ourselves. And so there was no the class conflict or discontent among the Indian public. Irrespective of higher or lower birth, if a person completed his or her caste duties without selfish motives, that person would achieve knowledge and liberation, the main goal of human life. So there was no obstacle to that goal, the obstacle to liberation. Once achieving the highest spiritual knowledge, there was no obstacle for that one. As long as it was free, as everyone was free to practice religion and achieve the highest goal of human life, as they put it, so they were not discontent. Poverty was not a very big thing. They said, it has come to us because we have of our mistake. We will correct the mistake, we become rich. So they were very positive about that. So they did not create a social discontent and go for caste conflict and caste war, etc. So where then was the possibility of discontent? So there is no reason at all for discontent. Disparity of material enjoyment between the classes caused conflict in Western society. But in ancient times, such conflict did not occur in Indian society because each individual had an equal right to the highest goal of life, liberation. Having reviewed the characteristics of ancient India's national life, let us now review the changes that emerged after coming in contact with the West. After the Western conquest of India, it was natural and inevitable that remarkable changes should take place in the distribution of the country's wealth. But the West did not stop with changing only that aspect of India's national life. The West brought about a radical change by influencing the fundamental ideas that had guided the individual and national lives of India from time immemorial. Westerners taught that the concept that the purpose of enjoyment is to renounce it ultimately was invented by priests to advance their own self-interest, that belief in an afterlife and the existence of the Atman were a kind of poetic fancy, and that the caste rule that a person must remain in whatever stratum of society he or she is born into was unjust and irrational. These were the teachings that they forced on this Indian nation when once the Western forces took political hold of this country. Indians gradually became convinced that Western ideas were valid. So the glare of the great political empires, so that made the poor countrymen here think perhaps the West, they are right. So all they say that the enjoyments are all the only goal of life, and there is nothing like a heaven, there is nothing like an Atman. Perhaps it is all, they are right, we are wrong. That is how doubts came. Relinquishing their previous life goals, which had been based on renunciation and self control. They became eager for more material pleasures. This is how great turn takes place in a nation when it wants to change over from its spiritual outlook into a materialistic outlook. Their ancient system of education and training disappeared, and they became atheistic, fond of imitating the West, and lacking in self confidence. As a result, they became as weak as worms. Indians came to believe that the long cherished beliefs they had held and practiced were completely wrong. They believed it was true that their traditions were primitive and semi civilized because Western science has proved them to be so. Infatuated by earthly pleasures, the Indian people forgot their ancient history and glory. This failure of memory led to the ruin of discrimination, and thus India's national identity was at stake. Realizing that they had to depend on their nations, on other nations, even for worldly enjoyment, the Indian people became completely frustrated. They had no means of enjoyment with them. For even to enjoy the worldly enjoyment, they could depend on the Western nations who had occupied, who had made them slaves. The paths of both yoga, which they were following earlier, and of bhoga, which the materialists were advocating, were lost to them. Imitating others and buffeted by waves of worldly desires, India began to drift aimlessly like a boat without anyone to steer it. So, this is the condition where India was just perhaps 50, 70, 80 years back. We were under the colonial rule, and all this had followed because we were forced to follow the materialistic philosophy of the colonial rulers. Gradually, a clamor arose all round that India had never had a national life. By the grace of the West, the country was now developing one national life. So this was all spread among the people. But there were many obstacles to its full manifestation. India's irresistible religious tradition had ruined its national life. India could not make progress because of idolatry. These were all falsely being preached to the conquered nation. Its practice of worshipping innumerable gods and goddesses, these were all cause for its misery. Destroy idolatry, therefore, uproot that tradition. Only then will men and women of India be rejuvenated. So this was being propagated. Foreign missionaries began to preach Christianity and the doctrine of monotheism. Organizations were formed according to Western fashion. They infused moribund India with the utility of politics, sociology, widow remarriage, women's emancipation, and so on. But the people's feelings of emptiness and frustration did not diminish. Rather, they increased duly. The people who adopted this materialistic philosophy, did they get real change in their from their distress into joy, into happiness? They did not get it. Rather, their distress and frustration increased. Railways, telegraphs, and other apparatus of Western civilization were brought to India, but all efforts to revitalize the nation were in vain. These Western methods did not attempt to search for or to re-establish the inspiring traditional ideas that had sustained India. How can one expect a disease to be cured if the medicine is not properly diagnosed and applied? How can India, whose soul is religion, survive if a religion is not restored to life? How is it possible for the atheistic West to eradicate the religious degradation that resulted from its own materialism. Being themselves imperfect, how can Western countries make others perfect? So, this is how India lost its moorings in its ancient traditions and values and system of education and everything. They try to imitate the West. Virtues and disadvantages of the ancient national life of India, the author discusses now. It cannot be said that India's national life was free from defects before the conquest of the West. But the nation was then vigorous and full of life. So its people constantly strove to rectify those defects. As we observe a certain lack of effort on the part of the nation and society, today we understand that the application of medicine in the form of materialistic Western ideas is about to kill the patient along with the disease. It's now evident that the degradation of religion in the West has also affected India. In fact, it is striking to see how far the degradation has spread all over the world in this present age. If there is any truth in religion, and if by God's grace one can attain the truth, then undoubtedly the present hedonistic age has deviated far from it. Modern science has improved the condition of human life by providing people with various objects of enjoyment, but it has failed to bring them peace. It's a very fact. We all of us are feeling it. Who will now set it right? Who will be so moved by the constant restlessness and agony of the world's people as to relinquish personal enjoyment and find a new religious path suitable for the modern age? Who will halt the degradation of religion in the East and the West and teach people to follow the new path of peace? Lord Krishna has promised in the Gita that whenever there is a decline in religion, he embraces his own Maya in order to become incarnate, to restore religion and help people to regain peace. Will not the need of the age intensely arouse his compassion? Will not humankind's emptiness and anxiety induce God to assume a body? Then the author says, O reader, the need of the age has accomplished that task. The Lord has truly reappeared as a world teacher. Listen with faith to his blessed message. As many faiths, so many paths. The new incarnation that has taken place. So his teachings, the author is giving. As many faiths, so many paths. That means harmony of all religions. You will realize God through any spiritual discipline if you practice it wholeheartedly. No bigotry, no partisanship in religion. It should be universal thing. Reflect intensely upon the superhuman renunciation and austerities Sri Ramakrishna practiced to revive the supreme knowledge. Come, let us purify ourselves by studying and meditating on his pure divine life. This is how the author, Swami Shardananda, so he argues for a spiritual turn for the Indian nation. We have deviated from the spiritual path we were following down the centuries, down the millennia. So that is why we are in great difficulty. We have to build up a nation which will be equal to any nation in its power, in its compassion, in its helpfulness to others, in its development of universal brotherhood, in its glory, in its education, system of education, and especially system of spiritual education. So India has a great role to play. So for that one, first India has to develop itself as an all-round country where spirituality and materialism, they help one another. In India, not that we should not have materialism. Materialism itself is not bad. When it is applied wrongly to colonize others, to enslave others, to bring misery to others, then only materialism becomes evil. Anything is by its application. If it is for good, then it becomes good. They say even poison is good when it is applied as a medicine. We have several medicines made out of poison, but they are medicines. Nobody says, oh, it is poison, don't take it. They go for it, pay for it, and take it. Similarly, materialism itself is not bad, but materialism, to an extent, it is necessary for person to grow and outgrow it. You have to outgrow. Many ideas are there which we should acquire, and afterwards, when the higher idea comes, leave it behind, go further. So in India, there is a saying, even stealing is to be learnt only to forget. Because stealing, others are stealing everywhere. They may steal in my house itself. Suppose I am aware how things are stolen away, so I can put some barricades for that, to stop people coming and stealing. So even knowledge of everything is good. Only when it is applied for wrong purposes, we call it as bad. Similarly, India has to now turn to its spiritual roots, and for making a turn to our spiritual roots, the nation first convinced that we are on the wrong track. We have to change the track. So there will be a transition period. There will be loud doubts. There will be a lot of arguments and perhaps bad blood between group of people. So somebody wanting only materialism, somebody wanting only spiritualism. So there must be a balance between this. So we have to grow as far as our physical needs are concerned. And so when the physical needs are all supplied, when even the commonest man gets the minimum necessary things for a comfortable life, then that is the time when spirituality has to come to him. So how to raise him to a economic level by which he becomes free from hunger and other vital necessities. And then when he is free from that, he himself will come and ask for something higher. I am tired of eating, drinking, and just sleeping and spending away my life. What is the purpose of my life? So this rigmarole of following their physical enjoyment has tired many intelligent people, not philosophers only. Common people also get tired. So they want something higher. The time has come for India to see how materialism has to be practiced to an extent to bring the people up from the lowest levels to the medium level. From then, they will be ready intellectually to accept the ideas. Later on, they become morally fit. Then they come to the highest stage of adopting spirituality as the only goal of their life. And so they can produce great seers, great sages like Shuka, Valmiki of the present age is Swami Vivekananda. These great spiritual people, they are produced from such people who have gone beyond all the physical wants, the intellectual wants. They want the knowledge of the supreme reality, God or Atman. So that stage can come by slowly going from materialism, controlled materialism, to higher levels of intellectualism, then moralism, then to spirituality. So this growth has to come slowly. For that, so we must first of all know that disease is like this. So the cure for this disease is what will be told by the great incarnation of this age, Sri Ramakrishna, about whom we will start in the next talk. In this talk, we have discussed the background in which Sri Ramakrishna takes birth, and he gives us the real medicine for the disease of the modern age, not only of India, but of the whole world, rejuvenation of spirituality. So this is the topic we are going to start from next talk. Until then, goodbye. Niranjanam nityamanantarupam bhaktanukampadhrita vigraham vai Ishavataram parameshamidhyam tam Ramakrishnam shirasa namama.